The automatic glass doors of Lawson Enterprises slid open with a soft whoosh, but instead of the usual parade of suited executives and clicking heels, a small figure stepped through. 8-year-old Amanda Johnson stood in the marble lobby, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her tiny fist. Her dark eyes, wide with determination, scanned the intimidating space filled with towering plants and abstract art that cost more than most people's cars. The receptionist Linda looked up from her computer screen and blinked twice, certain she was seeing things. Behind the sleek mahogany desk, security guard Mike shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unsure whether to laugh or call for backup. This wasn't the kind of visitor they were trained to handle. "Excuse me," Amanda said, her voice small but steady as she approached the desk. Her braided hair was slightly messy, and her yellow dress looked like it had been ironed with care despite being from a thrift store. "I'm here for the job interview." Linda's perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up to her hairline. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but I think you might be lost. Are you looking for your mommy?" Amanda shook her head with the serious expression of someone far older than her years. "No, ma'am. My mommy was supposed to be here at 2 o'clock for the project manager position, but she collapsed on the sidewalk outside. The ambulance took her to St. Mary's Hospital." Her voice wavered slightly, but she straightened her shoulders. "So I came instead." The lobby suddenly felt too quiet. Linda exchanged a confused glance with Mike, who had stood up and was walking over with concern written across his weathered face. Other employees passing through stopped mid-conversation, drawn by the unusual scene unfolding at the reception desk. "Honey, what do you mean your mom collapsed?" Mike asked gently, crouching down to Amanda's eye level. His own daughter was about the same age and something protective stirred in his chest. Amanda carefully unfolded the resume she'd been holding. The paper was slightly wrinkled from her nervous grip, but the neat typing was still clearly visible. "Naomi Johnson," she read aloud. "That's my mommy. She's been practicing for this interview for 2 weeks. She even bought a new blouse at the Goodwill." Her lower lip trembled slightly. "But this morning she was breathing funny and walking slow, and when we got to the bus stop near here, she just fell down." Linda felt her throat tighten. "Did someone help her? Did you call 911? "A nice lady called the ambulance and they said she would be okay, but they had to take her right away." Amanda's voice grew smaller. "The paramedic man said it looked like she was just really tired and hadn't been eating enough. But mommy made me promise to still come here because this job is really important to us." The elevator chimed softly in the background, and several employees whispered among themselves, moved by the child's story. Word was already spreading through the building about the little girl in the lobby who had come for her mother's job interview. Mike stood up slowly, his mind racing. In his 15 years working security at Lawson Enterprises, he'd seen a lot of unusual situations but nothing quite like this. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Amanda Johnson. I'm 8 years old and I live at 347 Oak Street with my mommy. We don't have a car, but I know all the bus routes." She looked up at him with those earnest dark eyes. "I know I'm not old enough to work here, but I thought maybe if I told you about my mommy, you might still want to meet her when she gets better." Linda felt tears prick at her eyes. She'd worked in corporate reception for 12 years and had become somewhat hardened to sob stories, but there was something about this little girl's quiet bravery that broke through all her professional walls. "Honey, do you know which hospital they took your mom to?" "St. Mary's. It's the one with the big cross on top. The ambulance man said it's only 10 minutes away." Amanda reached into her small backpack and pulled out a folder. "I brought all of mommy's papers. Her degrees and letters from her old jobs and everything. She said they show that she's really good at organizing things and helping people work together." The lobby had grown quite now, with more employees gathering at a respectful distance. Some had tears in their eyes, others looked angry that a child had been put in such a position. The story was touching everyone who heard it. "And where are you supposed to go while your mom is in the hospital?" Mike asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Amanda's composure finally cracked a little. "I don't know. Mommy and I don't have family here. We moved to the city 6 months ago so she could find a better job." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "I have some crackers in my backpack, so I'm not hungry yet." That's when the executive elevator opened with a soft ding, and Daniel Lawson himself stepped out. Daniel Lawson had been in back-to-back meetings all afternoon, his mind focused on quarterly projections and merger negotiations. At 35, he'd built Lawson Enterprises from a small consulting firm into a major player in project management and business solutions. Success had come at a cost, though. His personal life was practically non-existent. and his corner office had become more home than his empty penthouse apartment. He'd only come down to the lobby because his assistant mentioned some kind of situation that was drawing a crowd. Daniel expected to find a delivery issue or maybe a minor medical emergency. What he didn't expect was to see his entire lobby staff gathered around a small African-American girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. "What's going on here?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying the authority that made board members straighten in their chairs. But when Amanda turned to look at him, something in her serious dark eyes made him soften his tone. "Is everything all right?" Linda quickly explained the situation while Daniel listened with growing amazement. As she spoke, he found himself studying the little girl who stood so quietly, clutching her mother's resume like a lifeline. There was something about her dignity in the face of crisis that reminded him of someone himself, maybe at a much younger age when his own family had struggled. "So your mother is in the hospital right now?" Daniel asked, crouching down to Amanda's level the way Mike had done. "Yes, sir. But she's going to be okay. She just needs to eat better and rest more." Amanda looked directly at him with startling maturity. "Are you the boss here?" Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. "Yes, I suppose I am. My name is Daniel Lawson. This is my company." Amanda's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't seem intimidated. Instead, she held out the resume with both hands, like she was presenting something precious. "Then you're the person my mommy wanted to meet." She said Mr. Lawson was looking for someone who could help his company work better, and that's exactly what she loves to do. Daniel took the resume and scanned it quickly. Even crumpled from a child's nervous grip, the qualifications were impressive. Naomi Johnson had a master's degree in business administration, 5 years of project management experience, and glowing references from her previous positions. The only gap was the last 6 months, which likely explained their current desperate situation. "Your mother has very good credentials," Daniel said honestly. "But right now I'm more worried about you. Do you have somewhere safe to go while she's in the hospital?" Amanda shook her head, and for the first time she looked like the scared little girl she really was. "I was hoping I could just wait here until visiting hours start. The hospital man said I could see her at 6 o'clock. Something twisted in Daniel's chest. He thought about his own childhood, the nights he'd spent hungry and afraid while his single mother worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. The memory of that helplessness had driven him to succeed, but it had also left him wary of emotional connections. Now, looking at Amanda, all those carefully built walls felt suddenly fragile. "Linda," he said, standing up and making a decision that surprised even him. "Cancel my 4 o'clock meeting." "Sir?" Linda blinked in confusion. Daniel Lawson never canceled meetings, especially not important ones with potential investors. "I'm going to drive Amanda to the hospital to see her mother." He looked down at the little girl, who was staring at him with amazement. "Would that be okay with you, Amanda? You would do that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Of course. And we'll take your mother's resume with us. Maybe she'll feel well enough to talk about the job when we get there." For the first time since she'd walked into the building, Amanda smiled. It was like sunshine breaking through storm clouds, and Daniel felt something warm unfurl in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. As they walked toward the executive elevator, Daniel caught sight of himself in the polished metal doors. His expensive suit and serious expression looked strange next to the small girl in her thrift store dress and worn sneakers. But Amanda slipped her tiny hand into his with complete trust, and somehow that simple gesture made him feel more human than all his business successes combined. "Mr. Daniel?" Amanda said as the elevator climbed toward the parking garage. "Yes. Thank you for being nice to me. Most grown-ups don't listen when kids talk." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Well, you're not most kids, are you?" As his black sedan pulled out of the garage and into the city traffic, Daniel realized he was about to do something he hadn't done in years. Act purely from the heart instead of the head. The practical part of his mind warned him about getting involved in strangers' lives, about the complications this could bring. But every time he glanced in the rearview mirror at Amanda sitting so seriously in the back seat, those warnings grew quieter. Maybe it was time to remember that success meant more than just profit margins and market share. Maybe it was time to remember what it felt like to be human. St. Mary's Hospital smelled like disinfectant and worry, a combination that made Daniel's stomach tighten as he walked through the automatic doors with Amanda's small hand still tucked safely in his. The lobby was filled with people in various states of anxiety, some pacing, others slumped in uncomfortable plastic chairs, all waiting for news about someone they loved. Amanda seemed to shrink a little in the vast space, but her determination never wavered. She marched up to the information desk with the same serious expression she'd worn in the Lawson Enterprises lobby, though Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly. "We're here to see Naomi Johnson," Amanda told the volunteer, an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair. "She came in an ambulance about 2 hours ago." The volunteer's expression softened immediately. "And you must be her daughter. She's been asking about you ever since she woke up." She glanced at Daniel with curious eyes. "Room 314, third floor. Visiting hours just started, so you have perfect timing." As they waited for the elevator, Daniel found himself growing nervous in a way that had nothing to do with business presentations or board meetings. He was about to meet a woman under the most unusual circumstances, and he had no idea what to expect. What did you say to someone whose 8-year-old daughter had just applied for a job on her behalf? The elevator ride felt endless, but finally they were standing outside room 314. Through the small window, Daniel could see a woman lying in the hospital bed, her dark hair spread across the white pillow. Even from a distance, he could tell she was beautiful, but there was also something fragile about her that made his protective instincts stir. Amanda knocked softly and pushed open the door. "Mommy?" "Amanda." Naomi's voice was weak but filled with relief. She struggled to sit up straighter as her daughter rushed to her bedside. "Baby, I was so worried about you. Where have you been? How did you get here?" "I went to your job interview," Amanda said matter-of-factly, climbing carefully onto the edge of the bed. "And I brought the boss with me." That's when Naomi noticed Daniel standing awkwardly near the door, still holding her crumpled resume. Her dark eyes widened with mortification, and she immediately tried to smooth down her hospital gown and fix her hair. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You must be Mr. Lawson. I'm so sorry about this whole situation. I can't believe Amanda bothered you at work." Her voice grew stronger with embarrassment. "Please don't think this is some kind of publicity stunt or manipulation. I would never use my daughter to—" "Mrs. Johnson," Daniel interrupted gently, stepping closer to the bed. "Please don't apologize. Amanda didn't bother anyone. If anything, she impressed everyone at the office with her courage and determination." Naomi looked between her daughter and this unexpectedly kind CO, trying to process everything. "But the interview? I missed the interview. I understand if you need to give the position to someone else." "Actually," Daniel said, settling into the visitor's chair beside the bed, "I was hoping we could have that interview right now if you're feeling up to it." "Here? In the hospital?" Naomi's voice squeaked with disbelief. "Why not? I've already reviewed your resume, and I have to say your qualifications are exactly what we're looking for." Daniel smiled at Amanda, who was beaming with pride. "Plus, your daughter gave quite an impressive presentation about your skills." For the first time since they'd arrived, Naomi laughed. It was a soft, musical sound that made something flutter in Daniel's chest. "She did she? What exactly did you tell Mr. Lawson, Amanda?" "I told him you're really good at organizing things and helping people work together," Amanda said seriously. "And that you practiced for 2 whole weeks and even bought a new blouse." Naomi's eyes filled with tears, but she was still smiling. "That's my girl, always looking out for me." Daniel watched the interaction between mother and daughter with growing fascination. There was so much love and mutual care between them, even in this difficult situation. It reminded him of something he'd lost along the way in his climb to success: the importance of human connection. "The doctor says I just need to eat better and get more rest," Naomi explained, her cheeks coloring with embarrassment. "I guess I've been skipping too many meals to save money for rent and groceries for Amanda. Pretty irresponsible of me." "Not irresponsible," Daniel said firmly. "Sacrificial. There's a difference." Something in his tone made Naomi look at him more closely. Despite his expensive suit and polished appearance, there was understanding in his eyes that suggested he knew something about sacrifice himself. "So," Daniel continued, "tell me about your experience with team management and process improvement." What followed was the most unusual job interview of Daniel's career. Sitting in a hospital room with Amanda curled up against her mother's side, Naomi talked about her work with a passion that was impossible to fake. She spoke about helping companies streamline their operations, about finding ways to improve communication between departments, about the satisfaction of solving complex organizational problems. "The thing is," Naomi said, her eyes lighting up despite her exhaustion, "most business problems aren't really about systems or processes. They're about people. Help the people work better together and everything else falls into place." Daniel found himself leaning forward, genuinely engaged. "Can you give me an example?" "At my last company," There was constant conflict between the sales and marketing departments. Sales said marketing wasn't generating quality leads, marketing said sales wasn't following up properly. Instead of choosing sides, I spent a week with each team, learning their processes and challenges. Naomi's voice grew stronger as she spoke. Turns out they were both right. Marketing was focused on quantity over quality because they were being measured on lead volume, and sales was getting frustrated because they were wasting time on unqualified prospects. How did you fix it? Daniel asked, though he suspected he already knew. Changed the metrics. Started measuring marketing on lead quality and conversion rates instead of just volume. Set up weekly meetings between the team leaders to share feedback and adjust strategies. Naomi smiled. Within 3 months, sales were up 30% and both teams were actually collaborating instead of competing. Daniel was impressed. This wasn't just theoretical knowledge from business school. This was real-world experience and natural instinct for human dynamics. Exactly what his company needed. Mommy's really smart, Amanda added helpfully. She helps me with my homework and knows the answer to everything. I don't know the answer to everything, baby, Naomi laughed, hugging her daughter closer. But I try my best. Looking at them together, Daniel made a decision that was part business logic and part something deeper he didn't want to examine too closely. Mrs. Johnson, he said formally, I'd like to offer you the position of Senior Project Manager at Lawson Enterprises. The silence in the hospital room stretched for several heartbeats before Naomi found her voice. I'm sorry, what did you just say? I'm offering you the job, Daniel repeated, his tone matter-of-fact despite the extraordinary circumstances. Salary is $75,000 to start, full benefits, 3 weeks paid vacation, and flexible scheduling to accommodate family needs. Amanda bounced excitedly on the bed. Mommy, that's more money than you made at all your other jobs put together. Amanda, hush, Naomi said automatically, though her mind was reeling. $75,000 was more than she'd ever imagined earning, especially after 6 months of unemployment had drained their savings and forced them to move to a tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood. But instead of joy, she felt a familiar knot of suspicion tighten in her stomach. In her experience, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. Mr. Lawson, she said carefully, I appreciate your kindness more than you know, but I can't accept charity. If you're offering me this position because you feel sorry for us, I'm offering you this position because you're qualified, Daniel interrupted. Did you think I built a successful company by making hiring decisions based on sympathy? There was steel in his voice that reminded Naomi she was talking to a CEO who controlled millions of dollars in business. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something else, respect. He wasn't looking at her like she was a charity case or a sob story. He was looking at her like she was exactly what his company needed. Your resume speaks for itself, Daniel continued. Master's degree, 5 years of relevant experience, excellent references. The only question mark was the employment gap, and now I understand the circumstances. You moved here to find better opportunities, and the job market has been tougher than expected. That doesn't change your qualifications. But the interview, Naomi started. We just had the interview. You answered every question with specific examples and practical solutions. You demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking we need. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Johnson, I've been looking for someone to lead our new client integration project for 3 months. 3 months of formal interviews with candidates who had all the right credentials on paper but couldn't think beyond textbook answers. Naomi felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Everything he was saying made sense, but she'd learned to be cautious about good fortune. What exactly would the position involve? We've been growing rapidly, taking on larger clients with more complex needs. Our current project management system works fine for smaller accounts, but we need someone who can design and implement processes that scale. Daniel's voice grew more animated as he spoke about the work. Someone who understands that every client relationship is unique, but who can find the common threads that allow us to standardize without losing personalization. Despite her wariness, Naomi found herself getting excited. It was exactly the kind of challenge she loved, complex enough to be interesting, but with clear practical applications. How many team members would I be working with? Initially, you'd have a team of 5 project coordinators reporting to you, but the team would likely grow as we expand the program. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her a simple organizational chart. The coordinators handle day-to-day client communication, but they need someone with your experience to develop the systems and train them on best practices. Can I meet the team before making a decision? Naomi asked. Of course. In fact, I'd insist on it. A good manager needs to know if they can work well with their team. Daniel seemed pleased by the question. When would you be available to come in? The doctor says I can go home tomorrow morning, Naomi said, then hesitated. But I should be honest with you about our situation. We don't have a car and our apartment is across town. It would take me an hour and a half each way on public transportation. Not a problem. The position comes with a parking space, and the company has a program that helps employees with transportation loans for car purchases. Daniel made a note on his phone. 0% interest, payroll deduction. Amanda had been listening to the entire conversation with wide eyes, but now she tugged on her mother's hospital gown. Mommy, does this mean we can get a car? And maybe move to an apartment with a playground? The hope in her daughter's voice made Naomi's chest tight. For months, she'd been telling Amanda that things would get better, that they just needed to be patient a little longer. Now, suddenly, it seemed like all those promises might actually come true. But the scared part of her mind, the part that had learned not to trust good fortune, kept whispering warnings. What if this was all some elaborate mistake? What if Daniel Lawson changed his mind once he had time to think it over? What if she took the job and somehow failed to live up to his expectations? I can see you're worried about something, Daniel said gently. What aren't you telling me? Naomi looked down at her hands, then back up at his patient expression. It's just, in my experience, when good things happen this quickly, there's usually a catch. I need to know what you're really expecting from me. I'm expecting you to do the job I'm hiring you for, Daniel said simply. Nothing more, nothing less. If you succeed, you'll advance in the company. If you struggle, we'll provide additional training and support. If it turns out we're not a good fit for each other, we'll part ways professionally with appropriate notice. That's it. That's it. Daniel stood up and extended his hand. So, Mrs. Johnson, do we have a deal? Naomi looked at his outstretched hand, then at Amanda's hopeful face, then back at Daniel's steady gaze. Every practical instinct she had was screaming that this was too good to be true. But sometimes she realized you had to take a leap of faith. She reached out and shook his hand. We have a deal, Mr. Lawson. Excellent. And please call me Daniel. We're going to be working together. As they shook hands, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in months, hope. Real, solid hope that their lives were finally about to change for the better. What she didn't notice was the way Daniel's expression softened when Amanda clapped her hands with joy, or how his grip lingered just a moment longer than strictly professional. She was too focused on the practical miracle that had just occurred to notice that maybe, just maybe, this was about more than business for both of them. 3 weeks into her new job at Lawson Enterprises, Naomi was beginning to believe that sometimes good things really did happen without hidden catches. Her small team of project coordinators had welcomed her with genuine warmth, and the work itself was exactly the kind of challenge she'd been craving. The company had provided her with a modest loan for a reliable used car, and she and Amanda had moved into a sunny 2-bedroom apartment only 20 minutes from both the office and Amanda's new school. For the first time in months, Naomi was sleeping through the night instead of lying awake worrying about rent money and utility bills. But the most unexpected development was how often she found herself in conversations with Daniel Lawson himself. It had started innocently enough. He'd stopped by her office to check on how she was settling in, or to get updates on the client integration project. But somehow, those brief professional check-ins had evolved into longer discussions about business strategy, company culture, and occasionally more personal topics. How's Amanda adjusting to her new school? Daniel asked on a Friday afternoon, appearing in her office doorway with 2 cups of coffee from the break room. She loves it, Naomi replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. They have an after-school program that runs until 6, so she can do her homework there and I don't have to worry about her being alone. She paused, studying his face. You know, you don't have to keep checking on us. We're doing fine. Daniel settled into the chair across from her desk, a gesture that had become surprisingly familiar over the past few weeks. I know you're doing fine. Your project status reports are the most thorough I've ever seen, and your team has nothing but good things to say about your leadership style. Then why do you keep dropping by? The question hung in the air between them, and Naomi realized she genuinely wanted to know the answer. Daniel Lawson was a busy CEO with dozens of employees and multiple major projects under his oversight. Logic suggested he should be spending his time on bigger priorities than checking on one new hire, no matter how unusual the circumstances of her employment. Honestly? Daniel took a sip of his coffee, seeming to consider his words carefully. I enjoy talking with you. You have insights about business and people that I find refreshing. Something warm fluttered in Naomi's chest, but she pushed it down. Daniel was her boss and she needed this job too much to complicate it with personal feelings. I enjoy our conversations too, but I want to make sure the other employees don't think I'm getting special treatment. Are you worried about office gossip? A little, Naomi admitted. I know some people are curious about how I got hired. The story about Amanda coming to the interview has made the rounds, and I don't want anyone thinking I used my daughter to manipulate you. Daniel's expression grew serious. Has anyone said something to you directly? No, nothing overt. Just, looks, you know? A few comments about how lucky I am. Naomi shrugged, trying to appear casual. I can handle it. I just want to make sure I earn my place here through my work, not through sympathy. You've already done that, Daniel said firmly. The client satisfaction scores for your accounts have improved 15% since you took over. The integration timeline you developed is 2 weeks ahead of schedule. And yesterday, the team from Morrison Tech specifically requested to work with you on their expansion project. Naomi felt a flush of pride. The Morrison Tech account was one of the company's largest clients, and their expansion project would be worth over $2 million in fees. Really? They requested me? They said, and I quote, "We want to work with the project manager who actually listens to what we need instead of trying to fit us into a standard template." Daniel smiled. That's not sympathy talking, Naomi. That's skill. The use of her first name sent another flutter through her chest. Over the past few weeks, they gradually moved from the formal Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Lawson to Naomi and Daniel, but she still felt a little thrill every time he said her name. Thank you, she said softly. That means a lot coming from you. It's just the truth. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. What happened with Amanda's father? If you don't mind me asking. Naomi felt her shoulders tense automatically. It was a question she'd been expecting for weeks, but it still stung to think about. He left when I was 6 months pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a father and didn't want the responsibility. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, Naomi said simply. But honestly, if he wasn't willing to be there for his child, we're better off without him. Amanda deserves someone who chooses to be in her life, not someone who stays out of obligation. Daniel nodded slowly. She's an amazing kid. You've done a wonderful job raising her. She makes it easy. She's always been mature for her age, probably because it's just been the two of us for so long. Naomi smiled, thinking about her daughter. She's been asking when you're going to come for dinner again. Again? Daniel looked confused. She keeps talking about how you should come eat with us because our new apartment has a real dining table instead of just a card table in the kitchen. Naomi laughed. I told her you're very busy, but she seems to think you might be lonely eating by yourself all the time. Something flickered across Daniel's face, surprise maybe, or something softer. She said that. 8-year-olds are very perceptive about these things. She's convinced that everyone needs family dinners and home-cooked food. Naomi hesitated, then decided to take a small risk. She's not wrong though. You are welcome to join us sometime if you'd like. Nothing fancy, just regular family dinner. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, and Naomi wondered if she'd overstepped. But when he looked up, his expression was almost vulnerable. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like that very much. As he left her office, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just shifted between them. It was still professional, still appropriate, but there was an undercurrent of something else now. Something that felt like the beginning of a friendship, or maybe something more. She pushed the thought away and focused on her work, but throughout the rest of the afternoon, she found herself looking forward to a simple family dinner in a way that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the man who'd given her daughter, and her a second chance. The following Tuesday evening, Daniel found himself standing outside a modest apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, holding a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of flowers. He'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt, formal enough to show respect, but not so formal that he'd look out of place at a family dinner. He was more nervous than he'd been before his first board presentation. When Amanda opened the door, her face lit up like Christmas morning. Mr. Daniel, you came. Mommy's making her special spaghetti, and I helped make garlic bread. It smells amazing in here, Daniel said, and he meant it. The apartment was filled with the warm sense of tomato sauce, garlic, and something that smelled like home in a way his sterile penthouse never had. Amanda, let the man get through the door before you tackle him, Naomi called from the kitchen, but her voice was warm with laughter. When Daniel saw her, he felt his breath catch slightly. She was wearing a simple green sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked more beautiful than any of the formally dressed society women he'd dated over the years. There was something about seeing her in her own space, relaxed and happy, that made his chest tight. "I brought wine," he said, holding up the bottle. "And these are for you." He handed her the flowers, feeling suddenly awkward. "I wasn't sure what kind you liked." "They're beautiful," Naomi said, accepting the daisies with a smile that made his nervousness worth it. "Thank you. You really didn't need to bring anything." "My mother would roll over in her grave if I showed up to dinner empty-handed," Daniel replied, then immediately wondered if mentioning his deceased mother was appropriate dinner conversation. But Naomi's expression softened with understanding. "She raised you right. Come on, let me give you the tour." The apartment was small but cozy, decorated with thrift store finds that Naomi had somehow made look intentional and stylish. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, and family photos sat on every available surface, most of them showing Amanda at various ages, always with her mother's arms around her. "It's not much," Naomi said, suddenly seeming self-conscious about the modest surroundings. "It's perfect," Daniel said honestly. "It feels like a real home." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. "What does your place feel like?" Daniel considered the question. His penthouse was beautiful, expensive, and featured in architectural magazines. It was also cold, impersonal, and echoed when he walked through it alone. "Like a hotel room," he admitted. "A very nice hotel room where I happen to keep my clothes." "That sounds lonely," Amanda said matter-of-factly, appearing beside them with a basket of garlic bread. "You should get some pictures and maybe a plant. Plants make everywhere happier." "Amanda's our interior design consultant," Naomi said with a laugh. "She has very strong opinions about decorating." "And she's right about the plants," Daniel said seriously, making Amanda beam with pride. "I should definitely get some plants." Dinner was a revelation for Daniel. He'd attended countless business dinners, charity galas, and formal events, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd sat around a table where the conversation flowed so naturally. Amanda chattered about her school day, telling elaborate stories about her teacher and classmates. Naomi shared funny anecdotes about her coworkers and asked Daniel thoughtful questions about his business philosophy. But what struck him most was how they included him so seamlessly in their family dynamic. Amanda insisted he try the garlic bread she'd helped make, and beamed when he praised it. Naomi served him seconds without asking, as if feeding him properly was simply what you did for people you cared about. "Mr. Daniel," Amanda said as they finished eating, "do you know how to play Uno?" "I think I remember the rules," Daniel said. "But it's been a while. Mommy and I play every night after dinner. You can be on my team until you remember how." For the next hour, Daniel found himself engaged in what was possibly the most competitive card game of his life. Amanda took Uno very seriously, and her strategy discussions were more intense than some of his board meetings. When she played a draw 4 card that left Daniel with a handful of cards, she actually cackled with glee. "She's ruthless," Daniel told Naomi as Amanda did a victory dance around the living room. "She gets that from me," Naomi said with a grin. "I don't believe in letting kids win. They need to learn that success takes strategy and a little bit of luck." Spoken like a true project manager. Or a single mother who's learned that life doesn't hand out participation trophies. There was something in her tone that made Daniel look at her more closely. "You've had to be strong for a long time, haven't you?" "We've had to be strong for each other," Naomi corrected, watching as Amanda organized the cards for another round. "That's what families do." The word families hung in the air between them, and Daniel realized with startling clarity that this, sitting around a small dining table playing cards with an 8-year-old, listening to stories about playground drama, this felt more like family than anything he'd experienced since his mother died 10 years ago. "I should probably get going," he said reluctantly as the evening wound down. "School night and all." "Ah," Amanda protested. "Can't you stay for one more game?" "Amanda, Mr. Daniel has work tomorrow too," Naomi said gently. "But maybe he can come back another time." "Really?" Amanda's eyes lit up. "When?" Daniel looked at Naomi, who was blushing slightly. "If your mom doesn't mind, maybe I could come back next week?" "I don't mind," Naomi said softly. "We'd like that." As Daniel drove home through the city streets, his penthouse felt even emptier than usual. The silence that had once felt peaceful now seemed oppressive, and he found himself thinking about the sound of Amanda's laughter and the warmth in Naomi's eyes when she smiled. For the first time in his adult life, success and money didn't feel like enough. For the first time he wanted something more, something that couldn't be bought or negotiated or acquired through hard work and determination. You wanted to belong somewhere. You wanted to belong with them. The weekly dinner invitations had become a regular tradition, and Daniel found himself looking forward to Tuesday evenings more than any business meeting or social event on his calendar. Tonight, though, something felt different. Amanda had fallen asleep on the couch after dinner, curled up with a book, and the atmosphere between Daniel and Naomi had grown more intimate as they talked quietly over coffee. "Can I ask you something?" Naomi said, curling her legs under her in the armchair across from him. "You mentioned your mother before, but you never talk about other family. Do you have siblings?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee mug in his hands. "No, it was just me and my mom. She died of cancer when I was 25, right after I started the company." "I'm so sorry," Naomi said softly. "That must have been incredibly difficult, especially starting a business at the same time." "In some ways, losing her is what drove me to succeed so hard," Daniel admitted. "She worked 3 jobs to put me through college, and I wanted to prove that her sacrifice meant something. I wanted to build something that would last, something that would make her proud. I'm sure she would be very proud of what you've accomplished." "Maybe. But I think she would have wanted me to build a life, not just a business." Daniel looked over at Amanda, sleeping peacefully with her book still clutched in her small hands. "She used to ask me when I was going to give her grandchildren, when I was going to find someone to share my life with." Naomi felt her heart flutter at the wistfulness in his voice. "Have you ever come close? To marriage, I mean." Daniel's expression grew guarded. "Once. About 3 years ago. Her name was Victoria, and on paper we were perfect for each other. Same social circle, same interests, same goals. What happened? She gave me an ultimatum," Daniel said with a bitter laugh. "Said I had to choose between her and the company. That I was spending too much time at work and not enough time building our relationship." Naomi waited quietly, sensing there was more to the story. "The thing is, she wasn't wrong," Daniel continued. "I was working 16-hour days, traveling constantly, missing dinners and social events. But I thought she understood that I was building something for our future together." "Did you try to find a balance?" "I tried to explain that the business needed my attention, that once we got through the expansion phase, things would be different." Daniel shook his head. "But Victoria wanted guarantees I couldn't give. She wanted me to set boundaries with work that I didn't know how to set. So she left. She left. Said she wasn't going to compete with my company for my attention." Daniel's voice grew quiet. "Maybe she was right to leave. Maybe I'm just not capable of putting someone else first." Naomi studied his face, seeing the hurt he was trying to hide. "You put Amanda and me first the day we met. You canceled an important meeting to drive a scared little girl to the hospital. That was different. Was it? Or maybe Victoria just wasn't the right person for you." Daniel looked up at her with surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe she wanted you to change into someone you're not, instead of loving who you are." Naomi chose her words carefully. "Building a company isn't just about making money. It's about creating something meaningful, providing jobs for people, solving problems. That's not selfish, that's purpose." Victoria called it an obsession. "Did it feel like an obsession to you?" Daniel considered the question. "No. It felt like responsibility. Like I had something to prove, not just to myself but to everyone who believed in me." "That doesn't sound like obsession. That sounds like integrity." Something loosened in Daniel's chest at her words. For 3 years he carried Victoria's criticisms like a weight, wondering if she was right about his priorities and his character. But sitting here with Naomi, he realized that maybe the problem hadn't been his commitment to his work. Maybe the problem had been choosing someone who didn't understand or appreciate that commitment. "What about you?" he asked. "Have you ever been close to getting married again?" Naomi's expression grew cautious. "Not really. A few relationships here and there, but nothing serious." "Why not?" "Honestly, most men run when they find out I have a daughter. They want the fun parts of a relationship without the responsibility that comes with dating a single mother." Naomi's voice carried old hurt. "And the ones who do stick around usually have their own agenda." "What kind of agenda?" "Some think a single mother will be grateful for any attention, that I'll be easy to control because I need help." Naomi's jaw tightened slightly. "Others see Amanda as a cute accessory at first, but they get resentful when they realize she's not going anywhere, that she'll always be my priority." Daniel felt anger stir on her behalf. "They sound like idiots." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just not good at picking the right men." Naomi smiled sadly. "After a while it was easier to just focus on Amanda and my career. Safer." "Safer how?" "Safer for both of us. Amanda got attached to one of my boyfriends a couple years ago, Jason. He was great with her, or so I thought. When he decided he wanted out, he just disappeared one day. No explanation, no goodbye to Amanda, nothing. Naomi's voice grew fierce with protectiveness. She cried for weeks, asking why Jason didn't want to be her friend anymore. I swore I'd never put her through that again. So you stopped dating entirely? I stopped introducing men to Amanda entirely. If someone can't handle the fact that she comes first, then they're not right for us anyway. Daniel looked over at the sleeping child, understanding flooding through him. She's lucky to have you protecting her. She's all I have, Naomi said simply. Everything I do is for her. Not everything, Daniel said quietly. Tonight, sitting here talking with me, this is for you too. Their eyes met across the small living room, and Naomi felt something shift between them. The air seemed charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. Daniel, she said carefully, what are we doing here? I don't know, he admitted. But I know I don't want it to stop. The honesty in his voice made her heart race, but also made her more cautious. She'd been hurt before, and more importantly, she'd seen Amanda hurt. Getting involved with her boss, no matter how kind and generous he was, could complicate everything they'd built. But as she looked at him sitting in her living room, looking more relaxed and happy than she'd ever seen him, she realized it might already be too late for caution. They were already involved, whether they admitted it or not. 2 months into what had become their weekly dinner tradition, Naomi walked into work on Monday morning to find Daniel waiting by her office with an expression she'd learned to recognize, equal parts excitement and apprehension. Big news? She asked, unlocking her door and gesturing for him to come in. The biggest, Daniel said, closing the door behind them. Sterling International wants us to handle their complete organizational restructure. It's a $12 million contract. Naomi nearly dropped her coffee. Sterling International was one of the largest consulting firms on the East Coast, with offices in 8 cities and over 2,000 employees. They want us to restructure their entire operation? They've been acquired by a European parent company, and they need to integrate completely new management systems while maintaining productivity across all their divisions. Daniel's eyes were bright with the challenge. It's exactly the kind of complex, multi-phase project that could establish us as a major player in the industry. That's incredible, Daniel. Congratulations. Naomi felt genuinely excited for him, knowing how hard he'd worked to build the company's reputation. When do they need the proposal? That's where it gets interesting, Daniel said, settling into his usual chair. They don't want a proposal. They want to hire us based on our track record, specifically based on the Morrison tech integration you led. Naomi blinked in surprise. My project. Apparently, someone at Sterling knows someone at Morrison, and word got out about how smoothly that integration went. They want the same project manager who handled that account to lead their restructure. You mean they want me to lead a $12 million project? Naomi's voice came out higher than intended. I mean Sterling International specifically requested you by name. Daniel grinned. Congratulations, Naomi. You just became the most valuable project manager in the city. For a moment, Naomi felt pure elation. This was the kind of career opportunity she'd dreamed about but never imagined would come so quickly. Leading a project of this magnitude would establish her reputation in the industry and set her up for advancement she'd never thought possible. But then reality set in, along with a familiar twist of anxiety. Daniel, this is amazing, but are you sure I'm ready for something this big? The Morrison project was complex, but this is on a completely different scale. You're ready, Daniel said without hesitation. I've watched you work for 4 months now. You have instincts that can't be taught and experience that proves you can handle complexity. More importantly, you have the respect of every team member you've worked with. But what if I mess it up? What if? Then we'll figure it out together, Daniel interrupted gently. You won't be doing this alone, Naomi. You'll have full support from the company, additional staff if you need it, and direct access to me throughout the project. Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. There was professional confidence in his voice, but also something more personal. Something that sounded almost protective. This could change everything for the company, she said slowly. And for me? Yes, it could. If I succeed, I'll probably get offers from other firms. Bigger firms. Daniel's expression grew carefully neutral. Probably. And if I fail, it could damage Lawson Enterprises' reputation. It could hurt you personally. That's not going to happen. But if it did? Naomi. Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. I believe in you. Not just as your boss, but as someone who's watched you work miracles with every project you touch. Sterling International believes in you. The only person who doesn't seem to believe in you is you. His faith in her was both thrilling and terrifying. Over the past few months, she'd grown to trust his judgment in business matters, but this felt bigger than business. This felt like he was asking her to trust him with her entire career. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll do it. Excellent. We'll set up the initial meeting with Sterling for Thursday, and I'll have HR start the paperwork for your promotion. 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 You can't lead a $12 million project as a senior project manager. Congratulations, Director Johnson. Your new salary reflects the responsibility. As Daniel left her office, Naomi sat in stunned silence for several minutes. In the span of 10 minutes, her entire professional life had changed. She was about to lead the biggest project in the company's history, earn more money than she'd ever imagined, and work directly with the CEO on a daily basis. The professional opportunity was everything she'd worked toward. But the personal implications were more complicated. Working closely with Daniel on such a high-stakes project would mean spending even more time together, sharing the stress and excitement of a major challenge. It would mean late nights at the office, strategy sessions, problem-solving partnerships that went far beyond their current working relationship. It would mean testing whatever was growing between them under the pressure of professional stakes that could make or break both their careers. As she started reviewing the preliminary Sterling files Daniel had left on her desk, Naomi realized she was about to find out if what they had was strong enough to survive success, or if it would crumble under the weight of expectations and professional complications. Either way, there was no going back now. The next 6 months would determine not just her career trajectory, but possibly the entire direction of her life. She picked up her phone to call Amanda's school and let them know she might be working late more often. Then she took a deep breath and started planning the most important project of her professional life. 3 months into the Sterling International project, Naomi had never worked harder or felt more professionally fulfilled in her life. The restructure was proceeding ahead of schedule, client satisfaction scores were through the roof, and she'd successfully integrated teams across 8 different cities into a cohesive operational framework. But success, she was learning, came with its own set of problems. Did you hear that Naomi Johnson got the Sterling contract because she's sleeping with Daniel Lawson? The whispered conversation carried across the break room as Naomi approached with her coffee mug. She froze outside the doorway, her stomach clenching with familiar dread. I heard he gave her the job because he felt sorry for her kid, another voice replied. But now that she's director, she must be giving him something in return. Makes sense. I mean, how else does someone with 4 months of experience get put in charge of the company's biggest project? Naomi backed away from the break room, her hands shaking slightly as she returned to her office. She'd known this was coming, the whispers, the speculation, the assumption that her success must be based on something other than competence. She'd dealt with similar situations before, but never when the stakes were this high. The worst part was that she couldn't entirely blame her co-workers for their suspicions. Her relationship with Daniel had grown increasingly personal over the past few months. Their working partnership had evolved into something deeper. Long strategy sessions that turned into conversations about life and dreams, quick coffee meetings that stretched into hours, a professional collaboration that felt more like an intimate partnership. They hadn't crossed any official lines, but the connection between them was obvious to anyone paying attention. And in a high-pressure environment where careers were built on perception as much as performance, obvious connections were dangerous. Naomi? Daniel appeared in her doorway, and she quickly composed her expression. The Sterling team wants to move up the timeline for Phase 3 implementation. Can we meet this afternoon to discuss logistics? Of course, she said professionally, aware that several employees were passing by her office and probably noting how often Daniel came to see her personally. Are you all right? You seem tense. Just focused on the project, she lied, not wanting to burden him with office gossip that might reflect poorly on both of them. But that afternoon, the gossip became impossible to ignore. Naomi, we have a problem, said Jennifer, one of the project coordinators, closing the office door behind her with obvious reluctance. What kind of problem? The kind that could damage the Sterling relationship if we don't address it quickly. Jennifer looked uncomfortable but determined. There's talk among some of the team members that you got this position through personal connections rather than qualifications. Naomi felt her chest tighten. What exactly are people saying? That you're involved with Daniel, and that's why you were promoted so quickly. Jennifer held up a hand before Naomi could respond. I don't believe it, and neither do most of the people who actually work with you. But some of the Sterling team members have heard the rumors, and they're starting to question whether they're working with the most qualified project manager or just someone's girlfriend. The word hit Naomi like a physical blow. She'd worked so hard to earn respect based on her abilities, and now all of that was being questioned because of speculation about her personal life. "What do you think I should do?" Naomi asked quietly. "Honestly, I think you should talk to Daniel about it. This affects both of you, and if the Sterling contract is at risk." Jennifer trailed off meaningfully. After Jennifer left, Naomi sat alone in her office, staring at the project files spread across her desk. Everything she'd worked for, the Sterling contract, her promotion, her professional reputation, was suddenly at risk because of rumors and assumptions. But the rumors weren't entirely false, were they? She and Daniel had grown close. She did look forward to their working sessions for reasons that went beyond professional collaboration. She had developed feelings for him that made their business relationship complicated. Maybe her coworkers were right to question her qualifications. Maybe she had been promoted too quickly, given opportunities she hadn't fully earned. When Daniel knocked on her door an hour later, she was ready for a conversation that would probably change everything between them. "We need to talk," she said before he could sit down. "About the Phase 3 timeline? About us. About what people are saying about us." Daniel's expression grew serious. "What are people saying?" "That I got the Sterling project because we're personally involved. That I'm sleeping with you for career advancement." The words felt bitter in her mouth. "And that the Sterling team is starting to question whether they're working with a qualified project manager." Daniel's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, and something that looked like hurt. "Do you believe that?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," Naomi said honestly. "All I know is that I've worked harder on this project than anything in my life, and now it might fail because people think I don't deserve to be here." "The project isn't going to fail. Your work speaks for itself." "Does it? Or do people just assume I'm getting help from the CEO?" Naomi stood up, pacing to the window. "Daniel, I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Did you give me the Sterling project because of my qualifications or because of whatever this is between us?" The silence stretched between them for several heartbeats before Daniel answered. "Both," he said quietly. Naomi felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. "Both. Your qualifications got you the opportunity. But my feelings for you made me want to give you the opportunity." Daniel stood up, moving closer to her. "Naomi, you are absolutely qualified for this position. But you're right that my personal feelings influenced my professional decisions." "So they're right. People are right to question this." "No, they're not right," Daniel said firmly. "Because regardless of how you got the opportunity, you've proven yourself capable of handling it. The Sterling team loves working with you. The project is ahead of schedule and under budget. Your success has nothing to do with our personal relationship. But the opportunity itself would have gone to you eventually anyway. Maybe not this project, but the next one or the one after that. You're too talented to stay hidden for long." Naomi wanted to believe him, but the doubt had taken root too deeply. "I think I need to step back from the project." "Absolutely not. Daniel, if I stay on Sterling, it could damage both our reputations. It could hurt the company. If you step back now, it will definitely hurt the company. And it will hurt you professionally in ways that might never recover." Daniel moved to stand directly in front of her. "Naomi, don't let other people's small-minded assumptions destroy what you've built. What if they're right though? What if I'm not ready for this? Then explain to me how you've successfully managed every phase of this project so far. Explain how you've improved client satisfaction, streamlined processes, and solved problems that stumped project managers with twice your experience." Naomi looked into his eyes and saw absolute conviction. Despite everything, the gossip, the complications, the professional risks, he still believed in her abilities. The question was whether she believed in herself enough to see this through. 1 year later, Naomi stood in the conference room at Lawson Enterprises, watching the Sterling International team present their final satisfaction report to a room full of company executives. The numbers on the screen were better than anyone had dared hope: cost savings of 30%, efficiency improvements of 45%, and client satisfaction scores that had reached the highest levels in Sterling's corporate history. "In conclusion," said Robert Sterling himself, "this has been the most successful organizational restructure in our company's 50-year history. We couldn't be happier with the partnership we've built with Lawson Enterprises, and specifically with Director Johnson's leadership throughout this process." The room erupted in applause, and Naomi felt a year's worth of stress and doubt finally lift from her shoulders. She'd done it. Despite the gossip, Despite the whispers, despite her own fears, she'd successfully completed the most challenging project of her career. As the Sterling team packed up their materials, Robert Sterling approached her personally. "Director Johnson, I want you to know that we'll be recommending your services to several other companies in our network. You've set a new standard for project management excellence." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. It's been an honor working with your team. Actually, I have one more piece of business to discuss with you." Sterling glanced around the room, then lowered his voice. "We're opening a new West Coast division next year, and we're looking for someone to head up our project management department. The position would come with a significant salary increase and equity options. Would you be interested in discussing it?" Naomi felt her breath catch. It was the kind of opportunity that could change her entire life: financial security, career advancement, and recognition as one of the top project managers in the industry. "That's a very generous offer, Mr. Sterling. Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. We're not moving forward until next spring anyway." After the Sterling team left, the Lawson Enterprises staff celebrated with champagne and congratulations. Naomi accepted praise from her colleagues with a sense of vindication that felt almost overwhelming. The whispers and doubts of a year ago had been replaced by genuine respect and admiration. But throughout the celebration, she found herself watching Daniel, who was accepting congratulations on the company's biggest success with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Later that evening, after the office had emptied and the celebration had wound down, Daniel knocked on her office door. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You did something extraordinary." "We did something extraordinary," Naomi corrected. "This was a team effort." "No, this was your vision and your leadership. I just provided support." Daniel sat down across from her desk, looking suddenly tired. "Sterling offered you a job, didn't they?" Naomi nodded, not surprised that he'd guessed. "Head of project management for their new West Coast division. It's an incredible opportunity. You should take it." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Naomi had expected him to ask her to stay, to make some kind of counteroffer. She hadn't expected him to encourage her to leave. "Just like that?" she asked. "Just like that." Daniel's voice was steady, but she could see the emotion he was trying to hide. "Naomi, this is what you've worked for. This is the recognition you deserve, and it's an opportunity that might not come again. What about the company? What about us? The company will survive. We'll find another excellent project manager, though probably not one as talented as you." Daniel managed a small smile. "And as for us, maybe some distance would be good for both of us." "Distance? You were right a year ago when you worried about the complications of mixing personal and professional relationships. The gossip, the questions about your qualifications, you shouldn't have to deal with that." Naomi felt something crumble inside her chest. "So you want me to leave?" "I want you to be happy. I want you to have the career you deserve without having to worry about what people think about your personal life." Daniel stood up, moving toward the door. "I want you to be free to make choices based on what's best for you and Amanda, not on what's best for us. And what if what's best for me is staying here? What if I don't want to move across the country and start over?" Daniel paused with his hand on the door handle. "Then you should stay. But you should stay because you want to be here, not because you feel obligated to me or the company." After he left, Naomi sat alone in her office, staring at the Sterling contract proposal Robert Sterling had left on her desk. It was everything she'd thought she wanted: career advancement, financial security, independence. But the thought of leaving made her feel hollow in a way that had nothing to do with professional considerations. Over the past year, despite all the complications and gossip, she'd built something here. Not just a career but a life. Amanda loved her school and had made close friends. Naomi had found her professional confidence and earned the respect of her colleagues. And Daniel? Daniel had become more than just her boss or even her friend. Somewhere between family dinners and late-night strategy sessions, between crisis management and quiet conversations, she'd fallen in love with him. The realization hit her with startling clarity. She was in love with Daniel Lawson, and he was encouraging her to move 3,000 miles away. But maybe that was exactly why she needed to have one more conversation with him before making any decisions. 3 days later, Naomi knocked on Daniel's office door at 7 in the evening, knowing he'd still be there. He looked up from his computer with surprise and something that might have been hope. "I've made my decision about Sterling," she said without preamble. "And? I'm turning them down." Daniel's expression went through several changes before settling on concern. "Naomi, you shouldn't make this decision based on." "I'm not making it based on you," she interrupted. I'm making it based on me. Based on what I want and what makes me happy. And what makes you happy? Being here. Building something meaningful with people I care about. Raising Amanda in a place where she feels secure and loved. Naomi took a deep breath. And maybe, if you're interested, exploring what could happen between us without the complications of a major project hanging over our heads. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Are you sure? Because once we cross that line, there's no going back to just professional. I don't want to go back to just professional. I want to go forward to something more. Even with all the complications? The gossip, the questions about mixing business and personal relationships. Let them gossip, Naomi said with a confidence she'd earned through a year of proving herself. I know my qualifications, you know my qualifications, and anyone who wants to question them can look at the sterling project results. Daniel stood up slowly, moving around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure at the same time. It felt like the culmination of months of growing trust and affection, and the beginning of something entirely new. 6 months later, Daniel proposed to Naomi at their usual Tuesday night dinner, getting down on one knee in front of Amanda, who had been in on the secret for weeks and was practically vibrating with excitement. Will you marry us? He asked, looking between Naomi and Amanda with love that encompassed them both. Yes, Naomi said through happy tears. Yes, we will. The wedding was small and perfect, held in the garden of their new house, the one they'd bought together, with a real playground in the backyard for Amanda and room for Daniel's plants, which had indeed made everything happier. As they danced to their first song as husband and wife, with Amanda spinning around them in her flower girl dress, Naomi realized that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected beginnings. Sometimes a little girl's brave decision to apply for her mother's job could change everything. Sometimes taking a chance on love was the most successful project of all.